Hey everyone, Zach Mason here. Welcome back to my channel. I'm an author. I'm also the executive director of Path to Hope Ministries. That's path2hope.org. Please feel free to reach out to us if you need anything or have any questions, and a staff member will get back to you as soon as we can. But this channel is dedicated to biblical prophecy and current events. And we also talk a lot about dreams and visions because that seems to be one of the primary ways God is communicating with believers, followers of Jesus Christ today. I made a confession a few weeks ago where I admitted that I have a number of dreams that I've been given, and I haven't shared them. I've been doing a lot of interpretation, analysis of other people's dreams, but I haven't shared my own. And I did share a few weeks ago the dream I'd had about living under Russian occupation. I promised you I would tell you this other one I had about living under Chinese occupation, which I had on October 13th of this year. So October 13th, 2022. I'm going to go ahead and read this to you, and I'm going to say this. I was just going back through my dream log. I have a computer dream log, and I have a physical dream log where I write handwritten notes about dreams, and I've had a lot more dreams than I had remembered, and just going back through some of them, and I understand some of them a lot better than I did. So I think the next videos are going to be a lot of those. I'm going to have to release a lot of them. I think I need to in order to be obedient. Regardless, let's go ahead and jump into this. So on October 13th, this is what I dreamt. First I dreamt that I was in this huge field of flat rectangular stones. They were yellowish in color, all different shapes, all rectangular, but different sizes, widths, heights. They look like sandstone. So kind of imagine this giant sandstone brick patio. They were tightly placed together. And I remember there was other stuff that had happened before this in the dream, but this was the first part I really remembered. We were told, by who, I don't know, that we must loosen as many stones as we possibly could and throw them into the canyon to the left. There was a canyon, how are you seeing this? So field, I guess this would be your left, not sure. But we had to throw these stones into the canyon. And it seemed, and there was an urgency about it. It seemed impossible to get many, if any at all, loose. Like we were trying really hard. We couldn't get any loose. And it was like a puzzle. But I decided to just move to the edge of the canyon, like the edge where there was no more bricks on the left side of the bricks over there. And I started throwing those into the canyon rather than trying to work the rest of it like a field and free one at a time. That were great, and soon everybody was joining me, and when I look back, we dumped about 2/3 of the field into the canyon. Now, but when I look back, there was this huge alien fleet of unusual and technologically advanced ships in the horizon coming for us. So a fleet of these ships and aircraft, that huge shit like battleships, aircraft, but they were like alien, like the shapes, the structures on them did not look, and they were way oversized. I was certain they were aliens, and I saw them launch a barrage of weapons against us. The contrails of their missiles were blood red, and then we, the Americans, launched a barrage of weapons to counter them. As the missiles began intercepting each other, and ours were quite effective, like the American missiles were quite effective still against theirs. I was surprised to see that their missiles were indeed conventional. Their missiles were the same technology as ours. And I thought, that's weird. Why do aliens have conventional weapons? And then I realized it was the Chinese and not aliens. And they were ruthlessly slaughtering everyone. A main emotion I had was not necessarily fear of death, but fear of humiliation and knowing we were being humiliated as a country. Interesting. We all ran to hide and I fell in with a group of refugees led by a female school principal. She said, come down here, and there was a ladder leading into a subterranean tunnel that she had found. She had found an elementary school she said we could hide in. She said, we will switch elementary schools daily so no one can find us. My dad was there, and for some reason he kept talking about a ranch he had bought in Reno, Nevada, where there was a submarine half buried in the ground. Just the top half was sticking out. And he had one cow there, which would help us. He sent me to buy food for hogs because he had someone there who would buy hogs for him. I know this is a lot of detail. I know it's weird. I think I understand a lot of it, which I'm going to come back at the end and help. But so I was sent to go buy food for hogs. All right. I went to the feed store. It was a feed store just for hogs. And they had all kinds of questions about how many hogs, whether they would be wild or domesticated, etc. My daughter, Ashley, was with me. She's 9 years old. And the store had these tiny smiley face stickers at different stations in the store. I called my father to get answers to the questions about how many hogs, etc. And there was someone else there telling him they were getting 12 hogs. So we went outside, and this company, this store, had a huge black hog lying on the ground, and it seemed sick. It was so big, it looked like a mini black rhino without a horn. Its breathing was so loud, I thought, how in the world do pigs breathe this loud? It sounds like a tractor. Then I saw a bunch of the store workers riding lawnmowers around this neighborhood, cutting grass, and I didn't know if the noise was them or the pig anymore. Suddenly, overhead, all of these white and gray jets with Chinese markings flew in and stopped over us, hovering. So these were the, I guess, the style of plane that can hover, like a helicopter. Chinese vehicles rode in then and began picking everybody up. Like APVs, they started, armored personnel carriers, APCs. So they just started coming in and started grounding people up from this neighborhood. I was supposed to, then it kind of switched, where was it? I was greatly upset that our freedom of movement was being taken away. And then they put us in camps, and we were working in these camps. Now, I was in the camps. I was supposed to be doing a job in a sewer tunnel with another guy. And then that guy turned around, looked at me, and he grinned and said, really big, and he said, I know. Then he began working on something and then ran out. When I went over, I saw he had signed my name, except it wasn't my actual name. It wasn't Zach Mason he signed. It was something like Jimmy or Johnny Hollingsworth. But I still felt like it was my name. And he written it all over these cardboard boxes. And some of them said they had once contained doggy treats. But they were broken down. They were empty now. And I was like, what the heck? What in the world? What did he do that for? And then my father came in and he set about destroying the boxes with an urgent attitude of get rid of the evidence. And I was again like, what? Why? Well, evidence of what? This doesn't seem important or make any sense. And then a high-ranking Chinese official came to the front of the sewer tunnel, upset and panicked, to examine the boxes of doggy treats, that he had up there, smaller ones. And I kind of understood they were for his little dog, his personal dog. And he began eating them like one after the other, testing these doggy treats. They were small, they were like icing coated chocolate cookies. And he just ate them one over after the other, checking them for sabotage. And so I understood the man who'd run out had told him that I had messed with his doggy treats and poisoned them. And then he signed my name, but it wasn't my name, to these boxes to prove that I had sabotaged his doggy trees. I guess he'd done this in order to get out of working. By the way, I know this is a lot of detail and it's confusing, but I'm going to try to give you my understanding from some of this. Anyways, this Chinese official didn't find any real evidence, but I was picked up anyway and taken to a new processing center, and it seemed like a tech store that had been converted into a processing center. So imagine like a Best Buy type place. I was told to stand in line behind a woman who'd been accused of making a subversive video on her TV. They acted like they were going to hear the evidence for and against this, but they really weren't asking for evidence of anything. They were just moving us into becoming prisoners, and this was the line to measure our uniforms. So they started measuring me, and a guard barked something in Chinese. A very large, muscular Chinese officer put his arm around my shoulders with a smile, and in a gregarious way, he said, "Do you wear blue?" The last word was unintelligible. I honestly could not understand his accent. I asked him to repeat himself several times. He kept saying, "Do you wear blue?" And I understood, "Do you wear?" And then I was like, "What is he saying?" I was afraid to keep asking him because he was clearly trying to impress all of the other Chinese officers there and soldiers with his American ways and how he could speak English and relate to us and get us to relax, I guess. And that yet I couldn't understand him, and I didn't want to embarrass him about his accent. Finally understood he was saying, "Do you wear body armor?" So I shook my head and said no. He repeated it and said, "It can make your clothes not fit right. We want you to look so good. So we just need to know if you normally wear body armor." You know, it's like saying your shirt might be too tight. If you normally wear body armor, it might be too tight. We're cutting the uniforms very, very close. And so I was confused, but then I realized he was trying to ascertain in a clumsy way if I had been a police officer or in the military. And you know, I can understand if he was wondering that. Realizing this, I said, "No, I was not a police officer or military ever. A lot of people have thought I was because of my bald head, but I wasn't." He smiled and put his arm around me again and pointed out a window where I saw a group of 20 to 30 Americans in orange jumpsuits playing games to see who would win some new shoes. And all the shoes were the same color and style. So I understood the Chinese had stolen not just technological information from us, but also psychological, all kinds of educational information from our universities. And they were using games to pacify the people as they gave them each piece of prison clothing. And as I woke, I was not happy with myself. I felt like I'd been acting too afraid, and that if I wanted to be a better witness for Christ, instead of fearful subservience, I needed to show the Chinese voluntary, strong, confident subservience. Like Daniel. End of dream. So, okay, that was the dream. And there's a lot to understand, I think. But I'm going to point out what I think each part means. So, the first scene, the field of rectangular stones, specifically it looked like sandstone. I think those were symbolic of people, of Americans. Sand. God promised Abraham, your descendants will be like sand on the seashore, right? But sandstone, meaning hardened. So we've been hardened, but four corners, rectangular, sharp edges of the world. 4 is the number of the world, 4 corners, all different shapes and sizes. I mean, not shapes, all different sizes. But they were all locked together, locked in place, not movable. And I would equate this to the feeling we often get trying to wake people up to what's happening prophetically and they need to get ready. And we were being told, you need to loosen as many stones as you can. Get them into the valley. And the valley was like safety. That canyon was safety. for these stones. And it was really hard to loosen any up from the middle, just random places. So, but it worked really well when I focused on the ones closest to the canyon. So I would take that to mean like it's easier, it's really easy to move people who are closer to the truth, who are already ready to be protected, to be woken up. You focus on them, and then you'll be able to get to the next people, and the next people. And it was a much easier process than just going after people randomly. Now, the alien fleet, okay, what I get from that is it was very odd because it was so intimidating, so huge, weird, looked very technologically advanced. But in the end, they didn't have any better technology than we did. And so what I'm getting from that, because there's been a lot of news stories and things, and even some dreams talking about China having some very advanced tech. I'm wondering if this isn't telling me that they don't, that it's all a bluff, that they're projecting this image of having this very advanced technology to put fear in us. And when it comes down to actual fighting, it's not any different. Now, they weren't less than ours either. Like the missiles were matching in effectiveness. But we successfully took a lot of them out. And I also noticed that very different from the Russian occupation dream was that we seemed to have time to respond. So I don't know what to make of that other than maybe for some reason the Russian invasion is a complete surprise, but maybe they go early. Maybe they go a little bit early and it tips us off to what's happening, and we have a little bit of time to mobilize to push back against the Chinese. In the end, it didn't seem like it mattered. And their contrails were blood red. You know, that speaks to war, speaks to the communist China, speaks to blood. We had sections where we were running and being hid and going through these tunnels. Very disorganized. It was haphazard. It wasn't a real strong plan. But it was to survive, we definitely had to be in hiding. Now, this thing about Reno, Nevada, the ranch, I'm still trying to figure that one out. Exactly what that means. Maybe you have some ideas. Some things I just know, and why my father was involved, because we don't have, my dad and I don't have a ranch in Reno, Nevada. We're on the East Coast. I'm here in Georgia. We have no intention of buying a ranch in Reno, Nevada. We couldn't get to it very easily, even if we did. So I don't know what this came from. But the submarine half buried in the ground speaks to something that should be hidden, like is a weapon of war or vehicle in a time of war that should be hidden and fully submerged, but it's not. It's half visible. And I kind of got that idea that basically there was a big difference between the Chinese and the Russians were letting people live their lives until they were ready to do something with them. The Chinese weren't. It's like they wanted everybody under strict control right away. And I feel like this whole thing about the ranch and the cow and the hogs was like we had one cow, or he had one cow, which would have been very meager provision. But they, instead of hiding and saying, let's just hide out here, use the cow, do whatever we gotta do to survive, they started to like try to rebuild their lives. Like, we're just here under Chinese occupation. We're trying to build a hog, you know, a herd of hogs or whatever. I don't know if it's called a herd of hogs. But a hog farm. Basically, they were trying to get the business going. And that was why I was sent to the hog store. Hogs are not clean animals for eating, for consumption. and that other voice was someone else influencing that said 12 hogs. 12 is the number of godly government, but combined with a hog, which is unclean. I think this video would be too long if I try to get into all that, but I'm getting out of that we could have been fine with relying, resting with our meager substance of the one cow, which was a clean animal. But instead, we tried to pretend like maybe it was God's destiny for us to begin rebuilding this hog farm, and that's why the number 12 was brought in. But it's trying to bring in like a promise of God combined with something that isn't his plan. And factually, that's what happened. I went to the hog store and got arrested because I was going to the hog feed store. I do not understand what the big black hog laying on the ground meant. It was huge. I don't know. Maybe I could build on that. I have to think about it. But maybe just, again, unclean animal, black being sinful, huge, sick. So this whole effort is just sick and on its not gonna last, like it's on its last legs, so to speak. And maybe it was a symbol of that whole store, because everybody in there was kind of doing the same thing. I'm also not clear exactly what the smiley face stickers were, but that was for my daughter loved them. They were like stations in there, and it was just it was kind of a bit of a relief for a moment. But I noted that the hog was very loud in its breathing. Its existence was loud, drew attention. And that was the same thing about the lawnmowers. These guys were like trying to live life. They were trying to rebuild their life. And trying to rebuild their life and acting like everything was going to go back to normal, build business, cut their lawns, drew attention and got them arrested. Because that wasn't the intention of the Chinese military that was present. They didn't want people rebuilding their lives. They wanted them subservient and in camps. So that foolish move of trying to rebuild is what basically brought the attention. They got everyone arrested. And they came in with jets and the vehicles, and so I was caught with them. But again, because the name on the cardboard boxes, and the fact that this was on the West Coast, I actually don't think this was me. I don't know if I was just being shown a fictional storyline or if I was actually living some moments of another guy named Jimmy or Johnny Hollingsworth. I don't know. But I was given a dirty job. I was supposed to, it wasn't a pleasant job. They weren't saying, hey, go take care of these crops for us. They're like, no, go clean a sewer tunnel. What's the purpose of that? That's just humiliation. They just want us doing something dirty. But then this guy who betrayed me, he just wanted out of work. He didn't want to do this anymore. And so he framed me. He invented this stupid scenario, trying to get me framed for, poisoning the doggy treats. And so I don't know if he got out of work or not. I never saw him again. For all I know, he got killed too. They probably said, why didn't you stop him from poisoning the doggy treats? Death. Off with his head. Who knows? But regardless, that showed me that Americans will be turning on Americans. When you get in these situations, people will betray each other. My father came in and he said about destroying the boxes, right? And that for me is like my heavenly Father trying to protect me, is what I understood. The Chinese official coming in and going, oh, I got to check these and make sure they're not sabotaged. A couple things, told me a lot about his personality, and it spoke to something that I know it can be true of a lot of Chinese officials, is they have an image of being tough and firm and stern, and yet they're like children at times in their emotional maturity. And given to silly little luxuries as well. Like these doggy treats were they were chocolate cookies covered in icing for a dog. And he was so panicked over this, about his dog getting poisoned, that he started eating them himself to test them. And, I'm sorry, but that's just not, I wouldn't do that. I don't think an American officer, I couldn't see an American officer doing that. I didn't have any respect for him. I kind of, was like just kind of inside laughing at him. But got arrested, of course. Then we're in a processing center. And the other thing I saw about this Chinese officer, was, once again, immaturity. He was, like, these games they're playing to get people to put on the uniforms, they didn't need to do it. I mean, you can just get people the uniforms. What are they gaining? I mean, it's kind of silly. But it's like they had this psychological studies about doing games like this can pacify people or something. And it's like they felt like they just were going to show what masters they were at psychologically manipulating people. And so they were going to do these games to kind of slowly get people into prison outfits, even though they didn't need to do it. They didn't need to do any of that. They could have just said, "You're done, put on the uniform," and everybody would have had to. But instead, they're playing these stupid games to act like they're all that, and they have all this knowledge, and they're so smart. And that's what the guy was doing. He was putting his arm around me and trying to show off for his friends. He didn't really care about me, of course. And, it was just silly. I just saw how shallow, how fragile their egos were. It's the same thing as that fleet. Looked on the surface so technologically advanced, so big, and it's hollow. It really wasn't. I have to believe that the only reason that there was any success in this invasion in the future is because our country's already been decimated by civil war and other things, and we're not united. Regardless, the last thing I took from it, that is I think the important part, because when I woke up, I had felt fear too many times in the dream. I came across as timid and fearful, and I kind of woke up resolved to not be that way. Saying, you know what, I don't want, if I've got Russians, Chinese, whoever, I don't care, but I don't need to be fearful. I need to trust in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, be bold, be respectful. I mean, we're in this situation, we should be like Daniel. Daniel wasn't a rebel, and he didn't insult and mock and bluster like he was in control. He wasn't. He was in exile, and they'd been conquered by Babylon, right? And he'd been taken in exile. But he didn't act fearful. He was respectful and acted like he knew his place in the order of things, but he also knew his place in God's order. And he was more than willing to trust God and not fearful of man. And that's what he projected. And I think that's what we should all meditate on and think about if we go into a hard situation like this, that we need to be trying to imitate Daniel, to obey God and his law no matter what, and never fear man. Be respectful. Obey if we have to obey, whatever we have to pay that isn't infringing on God's law. Okay, that's what Daniel did, and I think that's what we're going to be called to do at some point. Kind of hard, I know, especially in this moment. It's hard because this would be very angering to lose our country like this. But God's judgment is God's judgment, and we know it is what it is. So that said, very weird, very detailed dream. I still think there's a lot of detail in here I haven't fully deciphered the symbolism of. Some of it was just literal and clear. But I don't know if this was a benefit to you. I hope it was. And do with it what you want. You got any ideas? You got any insights? Feel free to message me. Okay, well, see you guys soon. And I hope you have a great day.